The storm had been brewing all evening, turning the Montana sky into a canvas of angry clouds and electric fury. Jake Rivers wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked beneath the hood of an old Ford pickup, the only sound in his garage the rhythmic ping of rain against the metal roof. At 32, he'd spent more nights alone with broken engines than he cared to count. But tonight felt different somehow. Lightning split the sky just as he reached for his wrench, illuminating the empty highway beyond his small roadside garage. Jake had inherited this place from his grandfather, along with a gift for fixing things others had given up on. Engines, transmissions. Hearts, though he'd had less luck with the latter lately. The sound that followed wasn't thunder. It started as a low hum that seemed to vibrate through his bones, growing louder until the tools on his workbench began to rattle. Jake stepped outside, squinting up at the storm-dark sky. A brilliant silver streak tore across the clouds, trailing sparks of blue and violet light. Whatever it was moved with purpose, not like a meteor or space junk. The impact shook the ground beneath his boots. Jake grabbed his flashlight and toolkit, following the glow emanating from the forest behind his garage. Trees had been sheared, clean through, creating a path of destruction that led to a clearing where something extraordinary waited. The craft in Jake's engineering mind insisted it was a craft resembled a massive teardrop made of living metal. Its surface rippled with patterns of light, and steam rose from what looked like organic vents along its sides. As he approached, a section of the hull dilated open like an iris. 2 figures emerged, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. Were women unmistakably feminine, despite their otherworldly appearance. Their skin held a subtle luminescence, pale with hints of silver that seemed to shift in his flashlight beam. Intricate patterns traced along their arms and faces, glowing softly like bioluminescent tattoos. Their hair fell in waves of platinum that seemed to move of its own accord. They were identical twins, but their expressions told different stories. The first held herself with rigid dignity despite obvious exhaustion, her violet eyes meeting his with careful assessment. The second swayed on her feet, one hand pressed against the craft's hull for support, her breathing labored. "Please," the weaker one whispered, her voice carrying an accent Jake couldn't place. "We need help." Her sister caught her arm as she stumbled. "Shh. Protocol won't save us, Nix," Zara replied, her luminescent markings flickering like dying stars. "We're dying." Jake stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. "Hey, easy there. You're hurt. Both of you look like you've been through hell." Nix straightened, even as exhaustion shadowed her features. "We are ... travelers. Our vessel has sustained damage." "No kidding, Jake. Glance at the smoking wreck. That thing's not going anywhere soon. You need medical attention. Your medicine." "Cannot help us," Zara said, swaying again. "Our biology ... We cannot process your world's nutrients. The crash damaged our synthesis chambers." Jake looked between them, seeing past the alien features to something universally recognizable: fear. "What do you need?" "It's minerals," Nick said. After a pause, "specific crystalline compounds that exist in your planet's geological formations. Without them, our cellular structure will begin to break down." "How long do you have?" Zara's legs gave out, and Jake moved instinctively to catch her. Her skin felt warm, almost feverish, and those strange patterns were definitely fading. "Days," Nix whispered, her composure finally cracking. "Maybe less." Jake helped Zara into his garage, Nix hovering protectively beside them. He cleared his workbench and fashioned a makeshift bed from old blankets. Zara's breathing had grown more labored, and the light beneath her skin flickered like a candle in the wind. "Tell me exactly what you need," Jake said, pulling up a chair beside the workbench. Nix perched on a nearby stool, her posture perfect despite everything. "Our species requires trace amounts of crystalline minerals to maintain cellular cohesion. On our homeworld, these compounds occur naturally in our atmosphere. Here," she gestured helplessly. "Here you're slowly starving," Jake finished. "What kind of minerals? I might have some samples." Hope flickered in Nix's violet eyes. "Show me." Jake led her to a corner cabinet filled with rock and mineral specimens, a hobby inherited from his grandfather along with everything else. Nix examined each sample with growing excitement, her fingers tracing over familiar formations. "This," she breathed, holding up a chunk of quartz threaded with metallic veins. "And this," she selected several others. Pyrite, hematite, a few. Jake couldn't identify. "Can you synthesize what you need from these, perhaps?" "But the process requires precise molecular manipulation. Your technology might be more advanced than you think," Jake interrupted. "My grandfather was something of an amateur chemist. He left behind equipment that most people would consider excessive for a small-town mechanic." He revealed his grandfather's laboratory hidden behind a false wall in the garage's basement. Banks of equipment lined the walls: spectrometers, centrifuges, apparatus for crystal growing and molecular analysis. Nick's eyes widened. "This is ... unexpected. Gramps always said the difference between impossible and improbable was just a matter of having the right tools." They worked through the night, Nix guiding Jake through processes that pushed both his equipment and understanding to their limits. She explained their biology in careful, clinical terms. But Jake found himself distracted by the way her hair caught the laboratory lights, how her patterns pulsed brighter when she concentrated. "You're staring," Nix observed without looking, "up from the molecular synthesizer. Sorry, it's just ... Where I come from, we don't usually meet people who glow. Where I come from, we don't usually crash on primitive worlds and depend on the kindness of strangers." "Primitive?" Jake raised an eyebrow. Nix glanced around the sophisticated laboratory. Perhaps that was presumptuous. Maybe a little. Jake smiled and was surprised when Nix almost smiled back. "Jake!" Zara called weakly from upstairs. "The synthesis. ... Is it working?" They hurried back to find Zara's condition had worsened. Her luminescent patterns were barely visible now, and her breathing was shallow. "Almost there," Nix said, though Jake could hear the fear beneath her calm tone. The synthesizer chimed completion. Nix retrieved a small vial of crystalline powder that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. She dissolved it in water and held the cup to Zara's lips. "Drink, sister." Zara managed a few sips before falling back against the blankets. For long moments, nothing happened. Then slowly, the patterns beneath her skin began to brighten. "It's working," Jake breathed. Nick's composure finally cracked completely. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she watched her sister's recovery. Thinking, Jake reached out and took her hand. "Hey," he said softly, "she's going to be okay." Nix looked at their joined hands with wonder, as if she'd never seen such a simple gesture. "On my world, touch between strangers is ... forbidden. Good thing we're not strangers anymore." Their eyes met, and Jake felt something electric pass between them that had nothing to do with alien biology and everything to do with two hearts recognizing something precious in each other. "Nix," Zara murmured, her voice stronger already. "Your patterns are shifting. You're attracted to him." Nix jerked her hand away, luminescent patterns flaring bright with what could only be embarrassment. "Zara, rest." But Jake had seen it, too. The way Nix's markings had taken on a warmer hue when he touched her. Apparently some things were universal after all. Over the next 2 days, Zara's recovery was remarkable. The synthesized minerals had restored her cellular functions, and her luminescent patterns now pulsed with healthy vigor. She spent her time examining Jake's equipment with scientific curiosity, while Nix worked on repairing their ship's damaged biosystems. "Your sister's been staring at you for the past hour," Zara informed Jake, as he helped her calibrate a diagnostic scanner. Jake glanced toward the ship, where Nix worked with intense focus, her silver hair tied back, as she interfaced directly with the craft's organic controls. "She's just concentrating." "Oh, she's concentrating, all right. Just not on the repairs." Zara grinned, and Jake was struck by how human the expression looked despite her alien features. Her biometric patterns spike every time you walk by. Trick. Patterns. Think of them as involuntary emotional displays. It's very difficult to hide among our people. Zara's eyes sparkled with mischief. "She's quite taken with you, Jake Rivers." Heat crept up Jake's neck. And how do you feel about that? Zara's expression grew serious. Nyx has always been the responsible one. Duty before desire, protocol before personal feelings. She deserves happiness, even if she's too stubborn to pursue it herself. That evening, Jake found Nyx sitting outside the garage, looking up at the stars. Her patterns pulsed softly in the darkness, creating a gentle glow around her. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She nodded, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and clear. "Which one is your home?" Jake asked, gesturing at the star-filled sky. Nyx pointed to a constellation he didn't recognize. "There, though it would take your fastest spacecraft several thousand years to reach it. That's a long way from home. What brought you here?" "Exploration. Research. We were mapping this sector when our navigation systems failed." She paused. "We were supposed to avoid contact with developing civilizations, and now—" Nyx looked at him, her violet eyes reflecting starlight. "Now I find myself questioning many things I once accepted without doubt." Jake studied her profile, noting the elegant curve of her neck, the way her patterns seemed to respond to her emotions, such as whether isolation is truly wisdom, whether duty should always supersede personal desire. She turned to face him fully, such as whether it's possible to love someone from another world. The word hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Jake reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face gently. In his palm, "I've been wondering the same thing," he admitted. Nyx leaned into his touch, her patterns flaring brighter. "This is unprecedented. Our species doesn't typically form emotional bonds with others. Maybe that's why it feels so right." When they kissed, it was soft and tentative at first, then deeper, as Nyx's natural caution gave way to genuine feeling. Her patterns pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, and Jake could taste starlight on her lips. "Fascinating," Zara's voice interrupted them. She stood in the doorway, grinning broadly. "Sister, your bioluminescence is absolutely radiant." Nyx buried her face against Jake's shoulder, her patterns now cycling rapidly through what Jake was learning to recognize as embarrassment. "Zara," Nyx warned. "What?" "It's beautiful. Love looks good on you, Nyx." Zara's expression grew more serious. "Though we may not have much time to explore these new feelings?" Jake felt Nyx tense in his arms. "What do you mean?" Zara held up a small device that pulsed with urgent red light. "Our ship's sensors are detecting aircraft approaching from multiple vectors. Military configuration." "They've found us," Nyx whispered. Jake stood, pulling Nyx up beside him. "How long do we have? Perhaps an hour? Maybe less." Jake's mind raced through possibilities. They could run, but the ship wasn't repaired yet. They could try to hide, but military thermal sensors would find them easily. "There might be another way," he said slowly. "But it would mean trusting me completely." Nyx looked into his eyes, her patterns steady despite the danger. "I already do." Jake led them to a hidden cave system in the hills behind his garage, a place he'd explored as a child and used as a refuge during difficult times. The narrow entrance was concealed behind a waterfall, invisible to aerial surveillance. "We can hide here until the ship's repaired," he explained, guiding them through the winding passages by flashlight. The main chamber was spacious enough for the three of them, with a natural spring providing fresh water. Jake had stashed emergency supplies here years ago: blankets, canned food, basic tools. "How did you know about this place?" Nyx asked, examining the cave walls with professional interest. "My grandfather brought me here when I was 8, said every person needs a sanctuary, somewhere they can go when the world becomes too much to bear." They settled in to wait, but tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. Through cracks in the cave walls, they could hear helicopters circling, searchlights sweeping the forest. "They're persistent," Zara observed, monitoring their movements on her portable scanner.
"Now they know something crashed."
"They won't give up until they find it," Jake replied grimly. Nyx moved to stand beside him at the cave mouth, her hand finding his in the darkness. "I'm sorry we brought this danger to your world, to your life." "You kidding?" This is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in years. Interesting? Nix raised an eyebrow. It may all be captured or killed and you find it interesting. Shh. Turned to face her fully. Nix, before you crashed into my life, I was going through the motions. Fixing engines, watching television, sleeping alone. I was existing, not living. His hands framed her face, thumbs tracing the luminescent patterns along her cheekbones. You've shown me wonders I never imagined. You've made me feel things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. Nix's patterns pulsed brighter, responding to his touch and words. Jake, when this is over, when we repair our ship, ... I'll have to return to my world. My people, my responsibilities, ... I know. And you'll stay here, because this is your home, your life, Les Jake said quietly. There was another option. Nix searched his eyes. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe home isn't a place. Maybe it's wherever the people you love happen to be. The implications hung between them, profound and terrifying. Zara, who had been pretending not to listen, abandoned all pretense. Jake, do you understand what you're proposing? Life among our people would be completely different from anything you've known? Would it be with Nix? Yes, but then different doesn't scare me. NYX's composure finally shattered completely. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pressed herself against him, her patterns now blazing with colors Jake had never seen before. I love you, she whispered against his neck. I love you, and it terrifies me. I love you too, Jake replied, holding her tightly. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That night, as helicopters continued their search outside, Jake and Nix made love in the depths of the hidden cave. Her skin was warm against his, her patterns creating a soft glow that turned their shelter into something magical. Every touch was reverent, every kiss a promise of devotion that transcended species and worlds. Zara, with tactful sister wisdom, had retreated to another chamber. Though Jake occasionally caught the sound of her humming, apparently a universal expression of contentment. Afterwards, as they lay entwined in the darkness, Nix traced patterns on Jake's chest with her fingertips. Among my people, these markings tell the story of one's life, she explained. Achievements, losses, connections to others. What do yours say? Duty, sacrifice, isolation? She paused. But they're changing. New patterns are forming. Jake could see them in the soft light, spirals and interconnected lines that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his own heartbeat. Love, Nix whispered. They're showing love. New beginnings' dawn brought both hope and crisis. Zara had worked through the night to complete the ship's repairs. But their scanners detected military forces closing in on their position. The cave won't hide us much longer, she reported. Using ground-penetrating radar now. Jake studied the tactical display, his mind working through possibilities. How long do you need to get the ship operational? 20 minutes for basic flight systems. An hour for interstellar capability. We don't have an hour. Nix moved to stand beside him, her hand on his shoulder. There is another option. Zara and I could surrender ourselves, allow them to take us for study. You would be safe. Absolutely. Not, Jake. Be reasonable. No. His voice carried absolute conviction. We're not splitting up. God. If you're going to those stars, we're going together. Zara looked between them with growing understanding. He's serious. Jake, you would really leave your world for my sister. This world never felt like home until I met her. Outside, the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder. Ouch. Jake made a decision. That would change everything. Zara, get to the ship and start those repairs. Nix and I will create a distraction. What kind of distraction? Nix asked warily. Jake pulled out his keys and grinned. The kind that involves a very fast motorcycle. And a lot of noise. The plan was simple in its audacity. Jake and Nix would lead the military forces on a chase through the mountain roads while Zara completed the ship's repairs. Once the ship was ready, they would rendezvous at a predetermined location for extraction. This is insane, Nix muttered, as she climbed onto the back of Jake's motorcycle. Probably, Jake agreed, kick-starting the engine. Hold tight. They burst from the cave like a rocket, Jake's motorcycle screaming down the mountain trails with military vehicles in hot pursuit. Nix's arms wrapped around his waist, her patterns flaring with adrenaline and terror, left at the fork. Over the engine noise, consulting her scanner. They led their pursuers on a wild chase through canyons and forests, always staying just ahead of capture. Jake's knowledge of every back road and hidden trail in the county proved invaluable, but he could feel the net closing around them. The ship's ready. Zara's voice crackled through Nix's communicator. Heading to extraction point now. They crested a hill to see the bioship rising from the forest like a silver dream, its hull rippling with renewed health. But military aircraft. We're converging from all directions. We're not going to make it, Nix said, her voice tight with despair. Yes, we are. Jake gunned the engine, launching them off a natural ramp in a death-defying leap. They landed hard, the motorcycles skidding across rocky ground toward the ship's open hatch. Behind them, military vehicles screeched to a halt, unable to follow. Strong. Armed Zaras pulled them aboard just as the ship's hull sealed. Through the transparent walls, Jake watched his old world fall away as they climbed toward the stars. I can't believe we made it, Nix breathed, her patterns now pulsing with joy and relief. Believe it, Zara said, grinning as she piloted them. Beyond Earth's atmosphere, though I think our return home is going to raise some interesting questions. Jake looked out at the vast expanse of space, then at Nix beside him, her hand in his. Home, he repeated thoughtfully. I like the sound of that. Months later, on a world circling a distant star, Jake Rivers worked in a laboratory that would have made his grandfather proud, who's developing new synthesis techniques, combining human engineering with alien biotechnology to create wonders neither species could have achieved alone. Nix found him there as the alien sun set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Her patterns had evolved again, now showing permanent markings that spoke of deep contentment and abiding love. The council has approved our bonding ceremony, she announced. Unable to contain her joy, Jake swept her into his arms, spinning her around the laboratory as she laughed, a sound like silver bells and starlight. When? He asked. Tomorrow, if you're ready? Jake looked around at his new life, his new world, his new family. Zara had found love too, with a brilliant scientist who appreciated her quick wit and gentle heart. They were building something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds, a fusion of different peoples united by hope and curiosity. I've been ready since the night you crashed into my life, he told Nix, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted like starlight and forever. Outside there, Window 2 worlds shared the same sky, spinning together in a dance of impossible possibilities made real by love.